we develop our beliefs and our perspectives and our rules around what we think relationships should be, and we project those things onto our partners. Past relationships and relationship trauma. This is something that I experience all the time with my clients, and this is something that I have personally experienced in my own relationships many, many times. So here's the thing. We have very, very different role models about relationships from the time that we're very, very young. So if we grow up in an environment in which the relationships that we witness are toxic or they're not healthy for us to be witnessing, we develop our beliefs and our perspectives and our rules around what we think relationships should be, and we project those things onto our partners. Another thing that is a big struggle is being in relationships in which we experience traumatic things, hurtful things, distrust, miscommunication, and in many cases physical and even emotional abuse. All these things add up. So for example, you are really struggling to be truly open in your current relationship because of the fact that you are feeling like my ex did this, this, and this, and this, and that means my new partner is doing this because he's the same as my ex, right? I can tell you a personal story about this. I was in very toxic relationships. So my first role model in life was a very toxic role model. So my birth father was very violent. He was an alcoholic. He was a very toxic person for me to witness as my mom's ex-husband, because he was not a very loving person. So my first example of relationships was very toxic for me. It was a lot of abuse and a lot of hurt in that relationship. And then I went on to attracting very negative relationships for myself. I attracted relationships in which I felt emotionally abused, I didn't feel loved, I didn't feel cared for or understood, and there was a lot of fighting, and there was even cheating. So there were things that caused me to have a lot of negative relationship stories, and like I mentioned, beliefs, rules, expectations, perspectives that we create around relationships. Mine were all very toxic in the beginning of my life, and I have worked with many of my clients that are facing that exact same thing. You might be facing that exact same thing. And so what happened was that when I got into my relationship with Ray, he was a very different partner because I was always attracted to a certain type of person, and at some point I fell for someone completely different to what my usual attraction was. This then meant that even when he made the smallest of mistakes or he did anything that slightly resembled my past experiences or my past trauma around relationships, I would project that onto him. And that therefore caused a lot of struggle between me and my partner. This is something that happens very often, and if you are struggling with this subject, remember that it is super important to understand what your relationship trauma and what your past relationship experiences are all about. So what I can encourage you to do is to take a piece of paper and write down what your role model was when you were younger about relationships, as well as what were the relationships that you have been in and what were the negative things that you took out of those relationships. And now the important thing to ask yourself is, what are your rules, what are your expectations, and what are your beliefs around how a relationship should be? Because that very understanding that you can gain out of doing these things is going to help you so much in being able to move forward in your relationship. So if you're interested in finding out how you and I can work together to heal or create more powerful relationships than ever with yourself and others, please drop a comment below, or you can directly message me on Instagram or my Facebook page, and I will get back to you as soon as possible personally.